And so to start with, my name is Gerry Kastay. I'm a registered dietitian. I have been for so many years, over 30 years now. And I've had the great privilege to come to the BC Aboriginal Diabetes Conference for many years now. You know, I was thinking back and I'm actually not sure how many years it was. I think I probably started coming around 2011 or 2012. And so came for a number of years. And then of course we had our COVID intermission. And it's so nice to be back here and seeing everyone again. So that's such a pleasure. Again, I've had the great privilege to come to the conference because, I was working for the First Nations Health Authority, and my buddy Suzanne was one of the organizers of the conference. And so Suzanne asked me to come and talk about food because she knows I love to talk about food. Prior to becoming a dietitian, I was a chef. And so I know lots about food, and that's actually what I teach about currently. That's my main job, teaching dietitian students about food and how delicious food can be. And so Suzanne asked me to come and talk about food, and then they heard me talk about some other things because I can never talk about just one thing. So I have to talk about a bunch of things. And over time, what I presented evolved into some ideas about how food not only affects your blood sugar, but the other things that we get from food, the pleasure that we get from food, and the cultural identity that is carried by the foods we eat, and the things that we love about food. And so for so many people with diabetes, they've been taught that they have to give that up. And I don't believe that's true. I believe people can eat a wide variety of foods when they're eating for diabetes. And we can manage that through a combination of the food itself with activity, medication, and feeling good about ourselves. And so that has been my message. But over the years, it's evolved because, first off, the people here at the conference taught me so much. They taught me about some of the things that happen to them in residential schools and how that impacts the way that they eat today. And so that was a real learning for me because, you know, it's just all bright and shiny. And I came in and said, here's what you can do. And they were like, well, just a second, just a minute here. Here's some things that I've experienced and that I've lived. And those things make it challenging for me to do what you're saying. And so I've had to incorporate those learnings about people's lives impact their food choices in many, many different ways. And so for a lot of Indigenous people, residential schools was a key factor in food choice. And so it allowed us to talk about both how to deal with that and sometimes how we can celebrate food to leave it behind. And so that is one of the key ways that my message has evolved. And then we had our break for COVID. And so, of course, I missed coming and missed seeing people. But one of the things that I thought a lot about, and one of the things is that in society generally, over that time of COVID, people started talking about a lot of difficult topics. They started talking about how racism impacts people's lives and how we live in a white supremacist culture. And it made me realize things that we take for granted because, you know, particularly me, I live in this white supremacist culture and I don't even know the privilege that I'm harvesting until someone points out that they don't have that and they don't have the outcomes of that privilege. And so that started me down a path of, do people really know why some of the things that are contributing to diabetes? And that's why at this conference, I talked a lot about the things, the stuff that I've said that isn't necessarily true, and the stuff that I've said that is true, and everything in between. Because I've learned that because of these ways of learning, some of the things I've learned weren't true. And I needed to tell people that, first off, I told them some things that weren't true. And secondly, here's what we can learn from that, and here's the actual truth. And so those things become really important to me because, as I said in my presentation, sometimes with the very best of intentions, people sometimes tell us things that aren't true. And we have to learn that those things aren't true for us. And so that's my hope, is that I can convey that to the people here at the conference so they don't be like, oh, I gave myself diabetes. I see that so much, and it's like, no, you didn't do it. The world did it. And so let's just eat delicious food and move our body in ways that bring us joy, and let's feel good about ourselves, and let's work on developing our spirits, because those are the things that make us healthy. And that is a key factor that we want to communicate. And you know, that's what's good about the BC Aboriginal Diabetes Conference, is it brings people together and they can talk about stuff. They can talk about their own experiences. They can find out about other people's experiences. And all of that talking gives them a community. And we all need that community. And so I think, you know, as we look forward to the 20th anniversary, I think it's so exciting that BC ADC has worked for all those years to bring all of the people together in community. And that's the enormous difference that it's made over the time of its existence. One of the key things that I talked about today was the determinants of health. And you know, I don't make these things up. I went to good old Health Canada, and Health Canada has a nice list of all of the things that determine our health. And sadly, the number one thing on that list is income and social support. And so it's income that sadly is one of the best predictors of your lifelong health. Now, as I said in my presentation, a key factor for Indigenous people, where they're way ahead of everyone else, is that your social networks. The number two thing, number one is income. The number two thing is social networks. And the strong social networks, the community, the family that I see in Indigenous communities, that is what's going to make people healthy.